The impact Google has had on our business is immeasurable. Google continues to shape and redefine the way we process content, and now, more than ever, it is dictating the way we view entertainment. The success of Google would not be possible without Eric's vision and insight. I would also like to introduce Ad Age digital editor Abbey Klaassen. Abbey will be interviewing Eric on a topic that holds particular relevance for our business. What does Google mean for Tinseltown? Abbey and Eric? Oh, there you are.
Thank you very, very much, Jim. Abbey, before we do questions, I just got this in my inbox. Anybody read it? Atlantic, is Google making us stupid? I mean, we've got a problem if this is true, right? Because it's important to be smart. And, right? It's like not good. So let me talk about this just a little bit because I get excited about it. A little bit of the history here is in the article, the author, whose name is Nick Carr, points out that deep reading is equal to deep thinking. And since we're not reading deep anymore, we obviously are not deep thinking. And he goes on in his article to talk about how old media has to play by the new media rules, and the new media people have no game plan, and we're sort of disorganized and all that. Maybe it's all true. And what I was realizing in reading this, and I encourage you all to read it, is this is exactly what people said when color television arrived in my home in Virginia 40 years ago. This is also what people said 25 years ago when the MTV phenomena occurred and the short attention span and so forth. And I observed that we're smarter than ever. Maybe you all are anyway. So the important point here is that all of these sort of histrionics around the role of information and the changes, society is enormously powerful, enormously capable of adapting to the threats, that follow us. And it seems to me that if you think about it, you have this sort of emerging world order where a way of thinking about it is that there are sort of four different experiments in information. You've got the U.S., right, which we understand, innovative, creative, surprising, individualist, all the things that we all know and love, and is responsible for this enormous success that we are as a country, with this sort of deep investment in innovation. You've got another experiment, which is Europe. And Europe is actually culturally different from the United States, and when you spend time there, you see it. Educated, thoughtful, rule of law, empowering. You look at like the environmental policies, which are sort of better thought out, I think, than most everywhere else in the world. And strong government investment in broadband and so forth. Then you have China, okay. Very different from the first two. We're going to see this as the Olympics plays out. Monocultural, chaotic, controlling, confronting individual truths, one language, one society, one time zone. This is interesting approach, with this enormous wealth creation. And then the final experiment, again, going on in India. Easiest way to think about that is following, accelerating, and emerging of cultures, 22 different languages, very chaotic. And I think my premise in looking at this and in thinking about information, which I think is what underlies everything that all of us do, advertising is really a part of an information economy, is that information will be determined by culture, and how people use information, what the laws are, how they consume it, and so forth, will in fact be different. And the point here is that there are different experiments going on in different parts of the world. And I think when we debate this, and as we talk about this, we should take a look at it from the standpoint of culture, as well as information, as well as technology, and then, of course, as well as advertising. So, Abbey, do you want to get started?
Sure.
And thank you for my sort of rant there.
Absolutely. We have a special treat because Eric has agreed to answer questions from the audience as well. So we're going to split the time here. I'm going to ask some questions to get us started. And then if you have any, jot them down so that you remember them. But please come up to the mics here. I'll indicate, in about 20 minutes or so, we'll open it up to audience questions. So again, write them down so you don't forget them, and we will get to those. You talk a lot about information here and information and culture. I mean, this audience specifically is dealing with the kind of information we consider, entertainment. But information, let's just talk about content in general. I mean, Google has long asserted that it is not a content company. I think I've heard you have opened meetings with this phrase, we are not a content company. But times are changing, and you guys are doing all sorts of interesting deals. I mean, you're becoming a distribution vehicle for lots of video content. Explain to me, what is Google's relationship with content owners today?
I think having 3 computer scientists be in charge of entertainment is like an error, right?
Keeps these people employed, right?
So the good news is that there's some sort of a boundary beyond which we don't have any taste and creativity. And the good news is there's a lot of other people who do. As arrogant as computer scientists and scientists in general can be, trust me, we don't do this stuff very well. What we do well is we do things with scale. And so we're particularly good at taking something which is digital and making it bigger, faster, broader, more global. And because the company is essentially run by computer scientists, we'll get that stuff right. That's why we have such great cost efficiencies. That's why we have such distribution advantages. That's why our advertising product has the best return on investment of anyone by far, right? And we intend to make that even stronger. So we built the company with a focus around targeted advertising that was measurable. And an easy example here is when we first started, my friend Wayne said, we've just invented this advertising product. And he said, well, my friend who runs a supply tool shop, vendor, is thinking about getting rid of his sales force, but only if we promise to keep going with our advertising product. And I said, he's going to get rid of his sales force. He doesn't need a sales force. And I thought, wow, people are making real business decisions. And by the way, our counsel was keep the sales force because you're going to need them for things that we don't do well. But all of a sudden we realized at some point that people were really dependent upon Google advertising to literally run their businesses and pay their payrolls. So in our case, we've seen ourselves as an advertising and distribution vehicle, not as a creative vehicle. People say Google's a media company. Google is now a distribution company for content in the unique ways that we do, and that's where we draw the line.
Why not be a media company? I mean,
because we're no good at it.
Okay. What are some other things you're no good at? You said you advised your friend Wayne to keep his sales force. Keep your sales force so that they can do things that we're not good at. Are there, advertising things that you're not good at yet that you...
Well, it turns out that things that are measurable, we do very, very well. Things that are unmeasurable, right? Why would we have a better view on why a particular television ad would do better than another, except on something that we can measure? The good news is with our television ads product, we can actually now measure it. So we see ourselves as taking this enormously important industry, which is advertising, and taking as much of it that has historically been heuristically driven or anecdotally driven and turning it into a measurable business. This does not mean that creative people cannot be very successful. Indeed, we have a number of great successes, but they're creative in the context of measurability. An example is that in Google, employees come up to me all the time, and engineers come in and say, well, I've got this great product, and they show it to me, and I say, well, that looks like a great product, but my opinion doesn't matter at all. It does not actually matter whether I like your product at all. What matters is whether 100 million people like them, and I will count. And I find that very humbling for the person, because we just count them, and we can count them one by one. It's like the Roman army, every step. And so we know exactly how our products are doing, how our advertising is doing, what our revenue is, what our cash flow is. And I think that's frankly the new model of business afforded by the internet.
Speaking of new models, one of Google's new models came up earlier. Someone was talking about the Seth MacFarlane deal. Can you explain to us a little bit more about exactly what is that deal? What is Google's involvement? How does that change what Google sees itself as, or does it?
It's a good example of a really creative both person and then distribution team around him. The distribution team basically purchased inventory and then resold it essentially with
the distribution team being MRC.
Yeah, MRC in this case, his firm. And so the firm actually bought the inventory and then was able to then fill it with both our ads and so forth, and it's made money on the sale. What I like about the McFarland example is that here's a guy who's incredibly successful. He's got a strong brand, a strong identity, strong creative capability, and he has extra energy. You know, in this particular case, he's got, I think it's roughly 100 minutes of extra content being produced, which will be monetized using AdWords. And it's, to some degree, it's a derivative business in that he's already built the brand, he's already built the content, so it's just more money, which is great, right, because it helps fund stuff and so forth. But also, it's a good example where the internet doesn't need to be the inventor of something. You know, it can be invented in another format, and then you can make money on it in the internet format as well. The internet is open to people who want to do completely new things, but also is open to people who simply want to do adjacent things.
You said recently at a Newhouse School event in San Francisco that Google has a moral imperative to help publishers make advertising work on the internet. What did you mean by that, and could you apply that to Hollywood and the entertainment industry?
I was referring in my comment to the newspapers, and let me set up the answer with a little bit longer answer than normal. When you go to conferences where you mix people with my background and some of the content folks, the end state of the contest is this sort of optimism, and the optimism goes something like this. More people are online than ever. The existing, quote, older businesses, unquote, will in fact discover how to monetize in the new formats. That new information will become, you know, possible, and we'll all get through this. The evidence does not support that view, and I'm sorry to be such a downer, and I'm very worried about it, so I'd rather just confess. I'd love what I just said to be true. It's so important that it be true, but the evidence does not suggest it's true. What the evidence suggests is that the monetization models that have historically driven the profitability, the growth of these businesses, are not being replaced dollar for dollar, pound for pound, or whatever, in the new form. There are many reasons for that. One is that the advertising technology has not, the new technology has not caught up with the older models. The second is that user behaviors are different. They spend less time on content. So if you view it on a per minute basis, they spend less time being monetized. Now what that tells you, there's a huge opportunity if we can invent it to monetize that time. In newspapers' case, it's particularly bleak. And we all know this from reading about the layoffs and so forth. It's a tragedy for America because the newspaper industry, and particularly investigative reporting, is so fundamental to how our democracy works. You know, the classic example is how many people are covering the war in Iraq to find out what's really going on after us having, as a country, having spent $1 trillion on it. You know, it seems like we spent a little bit more money to cover it, but our economic system doesn't justify that. In newspapers, they're hit by essentially three things: the loss of yellow pages and sort of classified types ads. Again, Google is one of the replacements, so I guess we're part of the problem there. The second, of course, is the cost of newsprint, right, and the physical cost. And you know, you wonder what is the cost of the oil, the crazy oil prices that we have now. Well, newspaper costs more because the oil is, you know, used in the various production processes. And then the third is the decline of non-targeted ads. So these guys are in a world of hurt. And we as a community need to find ways of creating economic models that will fund really creative content. Entertainment is so good, especially with what you all do here, that I think entertainment will be the first to get through this gate. And although the entertainment industry does have a problem with relatively flat DVD sales, it's probably possible that we can invent highly, highly powerful video content solutions that will monetize similar to DVDs. One of the people in the audience told me years ago that he viewed the DVD as the perfect product. You know, it's hard to copy. It has all the information in it. You can mail it overnight. You can watch it as many times as you want, and you can charge a fair price for it. So we need something equivalent to that online.
I want to get into a little bit about, you know, you're predicting here that entertainment has the best chance of being the first kind of content segment to make this work, internet distribution. Now, Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. But historically, the business model for entertainment companies and the way you milk the most profits out of these content properties is, you know, by windowing them and only allowing certain bits to be available on certain platforms at certain times. Do you know, how do you see these two strategies, which are seemingly at odds, play out?
It depends on whether you believe the traditional lawyer model wins or whether the new consumer model wins. And sorry to be so obnoxious about it, but the consumer model is actually very, very simple. The consumer wants the content when they want it, on the device they want it, where they want it, in the format that they can consume it, and they want it now. This is easy to understand. And how do you know this? Look at the explosion of mobile devices. I'm on the board of Apple. As a bit of disclosure, look at the success of the iPhone 3G. And all the content that's becoming available on that. Look at all the mobile phones and devices that are coming on. Look at the deployment of both LTE, WiMAX, all the various other edge and 3G networks that are coming out. The fact of the matter is that many of the traditional limits that we saw were accepted because the technology did not allow a substitute. You had to go to the movie theater to have a high-quality experience. And in technology, we understand this. We understand that old models are disintermediated by new models, and we understand that it is disruptive. The fact of the matter is that this technology is going to disrupt those models. And in that model, I think that the entrepreneurs, and there are plenty of entrepreneurs here, who will be most successful will be the ones who embrace the new technology with clever approaches. They won't just copy the old model. They'll come up with new ways of both making money but also building brand.
Wait, you would cite the Seth MacFarlane deal as one of those?
Seth is a good example, but an easier example is use the New York Times. How many subscribers does the New York Times have in the print edition? On the order of 1 million. How many subscribers does the New York Times have on its digital site? On the order of 10 million. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's those kinds of numbers. So are they a print newspaper with an associated internet site? Or are they an internet site which happens to have bolted onto it a print newspaper? As the audiences shift, there's an opportunity, because you don't have the same constraints around media distribution, to have infinitely large audiences. So one strategy for you to take is to take the max everywhere strategy. In other words, in the celebrity age, you want to be famous everywhere, in every device, in every means, in every piece of news, in every internet channel, and so forth and so on. And you will simply take all of your content and you will put it everywhere. And part of the reason this might actually make sense is that when you talk to the people who build these amazingly high-quality movies and television shows represented by people here in the room, is they in fact produce 100 times more content than they actually edit into the show. So they have a lot of content. The example that seems obvious is, imagine today you were going to invent the equivalent of a series on television, and The Sopranos, for example. So the way you would architect it is you would have a weekly show, like we're used to, but you'd also have instant messages every hour going to your fan base 24 hours a day so they couldn't sleep, giving them a hint, right? Furthermore, every morning at 8, to get them up so they can go to work rather than just sitting at home waiting for the next instant message, you would give them some teaser. And then at 5 o'clock, you'd show them a 3-minute video on YouTube. And by the way, you'd couple that with an ad, right, that was relevant to something that the characters that they care about. This, of course, would cause them to lose any contact with reality and live inside the show. This is why they're called fans. But the fact of the matter is, this stuff works. And those people, and again, you could imagine, my first experience as a young boy was the fan base was the Star Trek base. So we can lampoon them all they want, but the fact of the matter is that's been 50 years of revenue and 50 years of fandom and so forth. It's possible now with these sort of max strategies, which is what I'm arguing for, to go for it all and literally get every single person engaged in the kind of communication and the kind of style that they want. But you have to take that as your premise. You can't take the traditional model as the only way to do it.
I disagree that Google is making us stupid, but I'm not sure about productive under that model.
There is this general question about interruption that, and I'm at the age now where I would criticize young people for interrupting me too much, just like my parents did when I was their age. So there seems to be a constant, and we need to address this in the media, that people have more interruption, more going on, and so forth. And our tools, techniques, entertainment need to reflect that.
Gotcha. Seems that born out of this idea of information accessible all the time and whatnot, are issues with intellectual property. I know Google has had its share of lawsuits in this area.
A few large ones.
A few large ones, a few highly publicized ones. Perhaps you'd like to address that issue of intellectual property. What role does Google have in terms of monitoring the problem or solving the problem of IP abuse? Can you explain?
It is our fastest growing product being sued. Just kidding. That was a
I didn't
joke.
realize you made money on that, huh?
No, we don't
Money
make,
on everything.
Unfortunately, we do not make money on that one. There's a lot of lawyers who make a lot of money on us on that. A serious answer is that just as we have a moral imperative with newspapers to make sure we don't lose investigative journalism, we both have a moral and a legal imperative to protect the copyright holders who are building the content. Since we don't ourselves do copyright, we are critically dependent upon high-quality content. Literally, if the content that I'm talking about doesn't show up, we will end up in this sort of world of low-quality, blog-based, random people's sort of idea of what is entertainment. It's not a pretty sight. If it's what happens, I guess it's what society wants, but it's not what we want. We value the production quality, the insight, and the creativity that is represented here, but more fundamentally by the industries that have built it. So the problem you have is that in the online world, and again, it's a shared problem. You have people who illegally upload content that's not content that they're supposed to. And we've taken a very clear view, as the other web companies have, that such uploading, when we don't know about it, is protected by fair use, and when we do know about it, we take it down. Okay, that's our view, and we think will prevail in all the various legal challenges there. The question is, what could we do more, right? And that's sort of a legal answer, not a how do we work on this together. So we came to this interesting conclusion that we would build a product called Claim Your Content. It roughly goes like this. Somebody illegally uploads content, we detect it. The first thing we were technologically capable to do was to detect illegal copies of songs. This is the Napster problem. We can detect those now. That's progress. In fact, we have deals with the song companies to pay them for that, and that's a great deal. They're very happy with that. The next thing to do is to do video deals, where if we know what a real copy is, we can detect an illegal copy, and then we can claim it. And then the author, content, somebody here in the audience, has a choice. You can, by the way, take the content and replace it by the right content. You can take it down. You can leave it up. Or you can put a wrapper around it and say, this was illegally uploaded content, but if you like it a lot, you can do the following thing, right? Because we believe that people, when we've detected it, they should have a choice.
Did you dodge a bullet on the Viacom YouTube user IP address?
These guys have been working in their offices too long without contact with the political implications of what they asked. They actually asked a judge who...
Viacom,
yes. They asked a judge who ordered us to give over all of the YouTube records of everybody's searches with their names, right? This is a federal judge. It's illegal to evade the orders of a federal judge, in case you don't know, right?
I mean, all sorts of things.
So there's no confusion here in the room. And, they have guns, and, so forth. You actually have to take this stuff very seriously. So we were in a situation where something which would have been truly a disaster in America, a disastrous activity, would have been initiated by Viacom. Who obviously just have lost touch with this issue. The good news is, as of yesterday, we were able to come to an agreement with them where we will, in fact, give the records, but the personal information will be fully anonymized. So it will not be, and trust me, we will make sure that that's true, because it's hugely important. One of the issues and we all share this, is that the internet servers are, in fact, accumulating some amount of personal information. And the question is, and some of it is required in the normal course of doing business, some of it is not. The question is, what's appropriate? An example would be, and not to go slightly off topic, but we have this huge issue of what we should do about logs. And there's a legitimate police argument that you want to know a little bit about the logs in case you want to find a terrorist. And terrorism is a bad thing, and there are evil people in the world. On the other hand, you don't want to retain this stuff, too long, because then it could be misused by other people. And so a compromise between those two factions arrived at an 18-month log retention, which, again, we've announced publicly.
And when you say logs, you're talking about the search data.
Search logs. Okay. And that's, again, a policy that was essentially imposed on us, which is fine with us. But it's an example where the debate over privacy and online life is not one that's been resolved. And my own guess is that this Viacom error on their part is not the last that we're going to hear about this. and that the society and we as a whole are going to have to come to some rules. You'll know, as a result of Robert Bork and his confirmation 25 years ago, it is illegal to disclose people's videotape rental records for privacy reasons. And you can imagine something similar.
I want to open it up to questions, so if you have questions, please come to the 2 mics that are in the center aisles here, and we'll start taking some of those. While we wait for people to come up, can you expand a little bit on the issue of mobile, and kind of where you see that going? Where do you see the future of mobile today? Where in the world, have you seen the future when it comes to mobile? And what does that look like?
There's a lot of reasons to think that the mobile revolution is going to be much bigger than the PC revolution. I'll give you the numbers. There are on the order of 3 billion mobile phones in the world. In our lifetimes, it looks like we'll get to 90-95% of all the humans on the planet will have a mobile phone, which is a phenomenal achievement in terms of poverty and information and so forth and so on. Of the mobile phones that I'm talking about, some numbers of hundreds of millions, estimates around 400 million, have enough essentially power to power a poor man's browser. There's a new generation of phones. I already highlighted the iPhone. There are others coming. Google has a software product called Android with hardware partners that are doing analogous things. There are other ones coming from the other majors, which are really enormously powerful computing platforms. And let me give you an example. They have a GPS, so they know where you are. They have a full computer, so they can do all your normal PC applications. They have a camera, and the camera's pretty good. They have a connection to the internet, which is as fast as the internet connection that you have at home. Oh, and by the way, you can use them as a phone. Here's an example of an application. We're doing an applications content right now. I don't know if this will turn into a product or not. This fellow built a product, third party, where you hold the phone up and you scan the streets around you. It recognizes where you are, takes a picture of all the buildings, compares them to Google Maps and Google Street View, tells you what's going on in the buildings, and tells you which one you should go to for the most entertaining thing that you care about, the movies or what have you.
Whatever that might be.
And so you literally hold this thing up and you scan and you go, wow, pretty amazing. So if that's the kind of application that we can get in a version 1 platform, imagine what will be possible 5 years from now by having a device that has all this. Give you another statistic. This is all being driven by Moore's Law. Moore's Law, is a doubling of semiconductor capacity every 18 months or so. It's likely to go on for another 10, 15 years, maybe longer. We don't know when it ends, but it's going to be, certainly for the rest of my professional career, it'll be true. There's another law called Kreider's Law, which means that disks are doubling in capacity every year. As a result of this, in the year 2019, if current growth continues, and we believe it will, it'll be possible to build an iPod-like device that has 85 years worth of video on it, which means you'll never finish. You'll be dead, right? You get this at birth, right? You start watching, and you're not done. So the impact on society of this is quite significant.
Another reason we hope good content never goes away, right? 85 years of bad content doesn't sound appealing. Let's start over here with this, and then we'll go over here. And just please say who you are, too, if you don't mind.
I'm Laura Del Greco. I'm with Turner Entertainment, and I seem to be a little at odds with, my parent company, because there seems to be an assumption that is made that you have the internet and you have linear television. And they're two separate windows that don't seem to really connect, except if you build something in television, maybe you can move it over to the internet or have something there. Don't you think that with the portability of devices, the way technology is going, at some point you will be able to, they'll almost be one. In other words, you can develop something for the internet, create mass audience, be able to count them, get a high CPM for these people because it's definitely targeted, and then you'll be able to just put some sort of I think I can do it now actually with my television, just actually hook my computer up to my TV and watch it in HD or watch it. And so at some point, don't you think that these things are actually going to come together much more closely than they are now?
I do. Japan is always it's an island for a reason. And Japan has the 3 most popular books in printed form in Japan, the highest selling, originally came out on their mobile phones as downloads. So that's an example. And again, think about Japanese people spend an awful lot of time in subways standing, reading the equivalent of their BlackBerries. Again, it makes sense that you could start that process. And there are many hardware people who are now building very high quality devices, essentially, which have an HDMI output that will drive a high quality television. Also, there's another generation of set-top boxes which have an open port, which allow, if one way to think about set-top boxes is they're just another computer because they're IP addressable. So it should be possible to have your set-top box, which is connected to your computer, scan for both everything that's interesting on television and everything that's interesting on the internet. Today, YouTube is, for example, doing deals to allow that, but the two have not crossed over. So I think the scenario you're describing is the logical next step, because now you have a single device where you can do the crossover, and you can make money doing it.
Good idea.
Go ahead.
Hello, my name's Tim Street. I'm with French Made TV. My question is, are there any big TV shows that will be using co-branded Google Gadget ads to extend their reach and distribution of their shows?
It's a specific one.
Yes, a very specific one. First place, gadget ads are pretty interesting. Again, we're experimenting, and I think I didn't talk too much about Google's innovation model, but it's worth just summarizing that our engineers are allowed 20% time to do whatever they want. They're engineers, so they're not that exciting, so they tend to work on engineering. And they do this sort of, a lot of our newest ideas, come from that. So one of the most interesting ideas is this gadget ads, which is the term gadget refers to a piece of software that plugs in on top of a website. Those gadgets themselves are entertaining. There's a lot of reasons to think that the best ads are narratives, and the best ads that are narratives would be enabled by gadget ads. Jordan, do you have any specific examples you want to cite?
Jordan Hoffner, YouTube, everybody.
I speak loudly. The using of AdSense like Seth McFarland, that is a gadget. So basically what it is it's a 2-minute piece of content wrapped with an ad that's distributed across the internet. So that happens all the time. And in terms of little mechanisms of get your stocks or get this, but now it's turning into content. So it's interesting to not only people in this room on the entertainment side, but in news, in business news, all those kind of things. What value add can you do to package your content with a relevant advertiser and then distribute it across AdSense? I think that's part of the thing that you describe it is, so what is about the season premiere 2-minute teaser of Law & Order or CSI? And so, and who's your big advertiser with that? Get that across the internet to drive a rating. That I think is the win-win.
And by the way, Jordan, since you're standing, why don't we just go ahead and announce the Lionsgate deal we're just about to announce, like in the next minute?
Sure. So we did sign with Lionsgate, which is the independent studio, and where it's a great deal in terms of they're going to be opening up their content to the YouTube audience, which is fantastic. But I think the thing that really differentiates them is that they're trying to leverage the YouTube community in terms of allowing them to upload their favorite scenes of Lionsgate movies and claiming that content to what Eric was describing about 20 minutes ago, so that they can collect.
Give me a mic, we can't hear.
Hey, Jordan, why don't you wander over here?
Yeah,
Just come on up.
Let me help. If you think about the movie Dirty Dancing, people upload the best clips that they like, and they do it without permission. So you, as a content owner, have a choice. We discover this, you can take it down, or you can do something with it. Jordan, why don't you describe what they're doing with it?
So, can you hear me now? Great. So what they're
And an
doing,
ad for Verizon as well, huh?
Sure, exactly. Just package that across the internet. So what they're doing is they're telling everybody, fans of Dirty Dancing, upload your favorite clips of Nobody Puts a Baby in the Corner, right? So everybody does that, and they collect that and essentially are claiming it because it is their intellectual property, and as opposed to taking it down, they're going to say, you know what, run ads on that, because people like to watch that stuff. That is the best scene, the most memorable scene of Dirty Dancing. So you open up that concept to the entire Lionsgate library, and it becomes a true incremental revenue stream on something other than DVDs and box office. So these are the types of people and the thinking that, in terms of including us, and us helping them and them helping us make a business together, that will be additive to everybody in this room.
Right over here.
Thank you, Jordan. Sorry for interrupting Jordan, but I figured it'd be easier just to make. These are some. The reason I wanted to talk about the Lionsgate thing is it's another example of a very, very creative group taking advantage of their brand and then using the distribution network of internet to actually capture new users. And there are many such ideas, I think, coming. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, my name is Rita Kerwin. I'm a brand marketer based in Ireland. I just wanted to ask, I was a huge fan when you turned your dashboard black for a day to promote saving energy. And I was just wondering how much it would actually cost to turn it, say, orange, like the telco company, for a day, or if Google would consider doing it.
I think we would certainly consider doing anything that would promote energy efficiency. We ourselves, by the way, are a large consumer of energy, and we're working on various green strategies, alternative energy strategies, because I think all companies, in particular Google, have a requirement to sort of do the right thing. We can use our pulpit to communicate things, but we want to do it carefully. I think this is one which we care a lot about.
Great. Thanks.
One more over here.
Hi, Alan Bloom from Revision in New York. Question, kind of a two-parter. I understand the excitement of the Seth MacFarlane deal. But could an argument not be made that rather than enhance the entertainment or the brand experience, that so much ubiquity, so much going on, the person who is going to be 85 years old and still watching the same content or new content there, is that it really diminishes the entertainment value or the brand experience? That's the first. And the second is, for someone with an offline reputation, a television film reputation, to come on into the online world and bring the pedigree with him or them, understand that there would be value. But if you're trying to promote original content online that isn't user-generated, don't you have to wade through mounds of user-generated crap, for a better word, to kind of find it? And isn't that just creating a really onerous experience for a user to find that content and hold on to it?
That is the word I use as well. It's alarming to discover that there are 10 hours of such information being uploaded to YouTube every minute. So we're losing, you and I, right? We're losing to this force. And so we view this as a search and ranking problem. In other words, why can't Google, with our computers and our understanding of how information is structured, we have enormous analytical capability now because we see all the way people use information. Why can't we tell the difference between something that's very high quality and something which is very poor quality? We're doing better, right? Our algorithms are getting better, but we're by no means no means there. And I personally view this as one of the great challenges at Google, because along the way, Google's success and our ranking and so forth, we've also had the great success of everyone's an author, everyone's a publisher, and everyone thinks they are, and they all want to be heard. They're on the order of 100 million bloggers. The average number of bloggers' readers is 1.0, which is themselves and maybe their mother, right?
That's the average. Does that mean some bloggers aren't even reading their own stuff?
My anecdotal evidence is that they don't. We have one of the world's most famous bloggers here in the audience, so we'll hear from her later, right? So there is, in fact, one who everybody reads, but the rest, no one reads, right? So this is reality. I'm concerned about the premise in your first question. I think this is something that, we can just debate, because we together can't stop this. The fact of the matter is that open networks, open communications, open publishing is reality for us. And you let's say that you take the position that you want to keep everything tight and private and promote your brand and so forth and so on, you will end up with a very, very pristine and beautiful and poorly visited outcome. Okay, in other words, you will end up in your mountaintop in your little house, with a beautiful view and have a great time while you're irrelevant, my personal view. Your alternative is to play in the scrum, right? Go in there, dodge all these, crap, and so forth, and build a business, build a brand, and build an identity for an audience which is billions of people. I think one of the things that's lost in there is, since that there's no distribution cost, when you're a hit to literally a billion people. One of the things we've done with YouTube is we've very much focused on international operation because there's more people outside the U.S. than in the U.S. The internet is growing faster outside the U.S. than it is the U.S. And by the way, most of the users eventually are going to be in China and India because that's where all the humans are. And we're not going to win that battle. You know, they're having more kids than we are. It's just life. So we might as well get organized around global businesses, global brands, and global strategies in this new technology to go win that. And otherwise, you're going to end up having a nice, ranch house on the hill.
Well, I think we probably have time for maybe one more, maybe two if we do it very quickly, but go ahead over here, and then we'll...
Thank you, Eric. Tom Troja with Social Vibe. Playing in the scrum, I'd like to ask you about social media. You've had a tougher time advertising successfully in social media. The friend-to-friend model, people paying attention to their friends, and how do you plan on improving the success of Google in social media, and what do you think it's going to look like when it really works well?
I think the honest answer is we don't know yet. Again, Google is a company about experiments. We run an experiment, we run an experiment. In social media, the fundamental problem is the people who are spending their time on watch and profile pages are typically in a social mood, not in an e-commerce mood. And so you have a branding opportunity because you can brand around the social experience, but it's very difficult to get people to buy refrigerators at a bar, right? Maybe it's possible, but again, it's mood and it's appropriate. And so as social media becomes more pervasive, which it obviously will be if you look at the success of all of the sites, MySpace, Facebook, High Five, so forth and so on, as it becomes more mainstream, I think we'll have better opportunities to do targeted monetization. Right now, the opportunity in social media appears to me to be primarily branding. And I think over time, we'll get better and better at doing measurements. There's reasons to think we have very good demographics. We know what the people are doing. We know what they're up to. But we don't want to do behavioral targeting. We don't want to say, oh, because this is your interest and these are the chat rooms you've been in, we're going to sell you beer. That spooks people out. It's a bad advertising experience, and it really causes people to not want to use the site.
Over here.
Hi, Blake Adams with Point Roll. I've heard a lot about cloud computing, and I'd like to know what your take is on cloud computing and how it'll affect content distribution, if any.
Cloud computing cloud computing is a term that's come to mean having all of the resources on servers that are not on your own computer. And the easiest way to understand this is what happens when you drop your computer and you break it. Anyone had that experience? I have. It's a disaster. You have everything on your computer, you're in trouble. So Google and others, but Google in particular, makes it now possible to keep everything on Google servers, and you don't know where the servers are, but you know and you trust that they'll always be there. It's roughly the same thing as an ATM bank account. The reason this is relevant for content owners is that it means that the content distribution can occur in the cloud, and that basically people can watch the content on any device that they want. It also means that their identities, who they are, their social networks are all maintained by the cloud. So the theory is I'll be able to walk up to a computer and I'll be able to say the equivalent of be mine. Here I am in LA visiting for the day, walk up to any computer here in the hotel, say be mine, have it immediately know who I am, all my social relationships, all the communications, all that kind of stuff. And then when I'm done using the computer, I can say sort of be gone, and it properly forgets everything, and it's not traceable and so forth, and then the next person comes along. That's important because it gives you a lot more viewing hours, a lot more ways of reaching interactive advertising experiences.
Well, that's great. I wish we could get to more questions, and I know Eric does as well, but I fear lunch is getting cold, so will you please join me in thanking Dr. Eric Schmidt?
Thank you very, very much. Thanks, Abby.